Warning: this podcast may contain graphic and triggering content. Please listen at your own risk. Each individual struggle is different, and everyone's recovery and healing journey is different. Please reach out to a certified medical professional if you need help. Welcome to episode 26 of Stomp the Stigma, the podcast aimed to fight the stigma surrounding mental health through education, awareness, experiences, stories, resources, and the vulnerable truth. Joining me to Stomp the Stigma today is Alisha from World of Wellness. This is part 2 of my conversation with her about her depression and anxiety journey. If you didn't hear part 1, go back and listen to episode 25. Otherwise, enjoy. I'm so happy that you have found yourself and learned to love every part of you. That's amazing. And I think everybody needs to kind of come to terms with themselves or accept themselves. But that's so much easier said than done. Yeah.
100%, especially the parts of yourself that you don't necessarily like, because there is going to be parts of yourself that you do not like. And I think once you understand that and accept that, then you can kind of get to another level of humanness and of like true life experience. You have to be able to sit with that and be accountable for yourself. And if you really don't like something, change it, and just have the strength to do that and to acknowledge that and know that. Because there is, if someone was to say, oh, I love myself so much, I love everything about myself, I love everything in my life, I love everything that's led up to this moment, they're probably not telling the full truth, because it doesn't exist. Perfectionism doesn't exist, and a sense of like complete acceptance and love for yourself, for who you have been, who you are, and who you will be, doesn't really exist. Because to get to a point of acceptance now, you had to have changed something that you didn't like then. So it's a constant journey, and I don't think that anyone can ever be healed. And I'm so self-accepting now, and I love who I am now. But in a year or two, I might not like this person, and I might have made a lot of changes because I didn't like certain aspects of like how I am now.
Yeah.
And that's what it's about. It's about constantly growing through life and just finding your way and never really feeling like it's too much, because life it's as much as you make it.
Yeah.
And you have to make these changes, and you're the one who sits with yourself. No one is with you more than you. Like, you are with yourself 24/7. So it's so important to like learn to love all these aspects of you that make you, and be able to sit with them.
So now that you are you have accepted yourself, and you're looking back over your whole journey and reflecting on everything that you've been through, is there any advice that you would give to your younger self, or is there any advice that you wish that you would have received when you were younger?
100%. I feel like there's a lot of advice I would give to myself, but just to pinpoint it, I would tell myself that I deserve the space that I take. I deserve the air that I breathe, and I deserve to fill all the spaces that I want to fill and be in, because I genuinely didn't think that I deserved it, and I held that for so long, and I didn't let myself do a lot of things that I wanted to do, or I would drop things that I was doing because I thought that it was looked at a certain way. So yeah, I would tell myself that I deserve that space, and it doesn't matter the judgment that people hold on you, because at the end of the day, they're not going to remember if you did something that is perceived as like silly or like stupid or unfair. Like, they're not going to sit with that in a year's time, let alone 10 years. They're not going to remember it.
Yeah.
So just do what makes you happy, what feels right in that moment, what makes you happy in that moment, and have all these life experiences, because the best life experiences I have are when I'm truly like authentically me, and being like that silly version of myself that doesn't really care for the judgments of other people and holds no judgments on myself. So that's probably the main things that I would tell myself.
Yeah.
I don't think I'd expect anyone to tell me anything, because I think that the person that I was then anyway, I wouldn't have listened to another person.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'd been like, yeah, and then just it would have just went in one ear out the other, because I held such judgments and like as such like an angsty picture of myself that I wouldn't have listened to someone else trying to give me good advice anyway.
I love that one. Oh, that's so good.
Would you tell yourself anything?
I don't know. I think I would probably say the same thing. I do kind of wish that when I was younger, somebody would have told me that what I was going through was okay and that it wasn't, I don't want to say normal, but
I completely get. I know what you mean.
yeah, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It's not something
yeah,
that everybody goes through, but at the same time you're not alone.
yeah. It's that. It's knowing that you're not alone.
Yeah, so I think I wish that somebody would have told me that when I was younger, because a big part of my struggles is or was just feeling like I was the only one going through that, and that nobody understood or nobody was really able to be there for me because I was so different from everyone else.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I completely get that. Yeah, I think that that's still a struggle today, is that people feel so alone
Mhm.
in what they are going through, regardless of if it's because of a trauma or because of their appearance or because of their sexuality. Just it could be anything. People feel so alone in their journey, because the one thing that mental health is really good at, if you struggle with your mental health, it is brilliant at isolating you.
Mhm.
So you are never going to find out about other people, because at that point in time, you're sat within yourself in an isolated place, and you don't want to talk about it, and you don't want to reach out, and it's scary to reach out, and it's scary to talk about it because you feel like you're admitting something that you want to hide.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's still a massive struggle today. That's definitely something that I try and like. I think that's why I'm so open with my mental health, because not only does it help me heal, but I see the change and the impact it can have on someone else. And to me, that's so important, because I literally felt like that. Like, I felt so alone at that point when I was told I had depression. I was like, what on earth? Like,
Mhm.
who has depression? Who at the age of 21 has depression?
Yeah.
Like, you just, I sat by myself and cried for days because I just felt so alone.
Yeah, I had my piano teacher when I was, I don't know, probably like 15. He, in one of my lessons, I remember him telling me that he thought that I had depression, and I just kind of was like, what do you mean? I don't have depression. And so, like, that was kind of the first time that somebody really said something like that, but I didn't really take it to heart or think about it really until like later on when I was kind of diagnosed with everything, and then looking back, I was like, okay, this makes so much sense now.
If there is a moment where you think this makes sense,
Yeah.
why did no one come to me with this like stop sign and say like, hold on a minute, let's go back and just look at all these things? um, there is a moment, and I think everyone who is diagnosed with anything in their life, regardless of it's mental health or not, has that moment of, oh my god, it makes sense.
Yeah.
It makes sense now. Like, this completely makes sense. And I think sometimes diagnosis can help people. It gives you that thing that you need sometimes in order to start the healing process,
Mm-hmm.
because you now know what you're trying to heal from.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. I feel like
Mm-hmm.
we're so similar. This is so
I
crazy.
literally feel like we're so similar. I feel like I'm related to you so much,
Yeah.
honestly. Like, literally, even just what you've just said in terms of like getting diagnosed with something that makes sense. So I literally, in the past month, just got diagnosed with, I don't know if you've probably never heard of it, it's called Meniere's disease, or Meniere's, I don't even know how to say it, like, and I've just been diagnosed with it. And I literally had a moment like 2 weeks ago of, oh my God, this makes sense. Because I've literally been having symptoms since, brief symptoms since I was like literally can I remember, and major symptoms for like a year and a half. And no one knew what it was. And I only just recently got diagnosed, and now I'm just like, okay, this makes sense. But like, why did no one tell me
Yeah.
this back then?
It's
Yeah,
like
it lit.
this relief that okay, you finally know what it is, and you can not like blame the symptoms and everything on it, but you have something
Yeah.
as like kind of an excuse or
Yeah, I literally, when I got diagnosed with this, so a lot of the symptoms like dizziness, fatigue, like hearing loss, tinnitus, all of that, like in ear thing,
yeah,
like confusion and tiredness. And I remember like literally I got that letter to say this is what it is. And I was like, oh my God, like this makes sense. Like all of these things are because of thing, this thing that I've got. It's like that, I'm not crazy. I didn't make them up. Like
yeah,
it is a thing, it's this thing and it's recognized. And there was that moment of like, why? Like, why me? Why do I have this? Why? Like, it makes sense, but why?
yeah,
Um, and I do that kind of with everything that I'm ever diagnosed with. I did that when I was diagnosed with the anxiety. In the end, I was like, okay, like you told me it was depression, now it's not depression, but now the symptoms make so much sense for it to be anxiety. But why did I not get told it was anxiety
mm-hmm.
until like now? Because now, like all of them things I could have stopped, but then all of them things happen because of, and you just kind of spiral on it
Yeah,
a little bit. But I definitely think getting that label, that diagnosis, it definitely gives you something to, it's like a relief, I feel.
yeah,
Like it's kind of like you can breathe a little bit because you have, yeah, blame isn't the right word, but you have something to
yeah.
stick it to. It's not just like blown in the wind anymore. Like you've got something to like attach it to.
Exactly, exactly. There's such a double-sided coin with the labels and the diagnosis. Like, yes, you have this sense of relief, like you know what it is now, but then sometimes people use that as like as an excuse. So they do certain things, oh,
100%.
because it's because of the depression or because of the anxiety. And so it's like it goes both ways, but
100%. And I feel like you'll never really get to a point where mental health will be fully understood because it's not as easy as you can see it.
mhm,
Um, it's obviously it's so difficult. Like you don't know if someone's struggling or not. You don't know if someone is. People can use their advantage in like a more of a cynical way sometimes. Even if things like you want a day off work and your manager's not giving you it, or you don't want to go somewhere and your partner wants to go, and you just don't want to go because you can't be bothered. Like nothing to do with your mental health. It's easy to say because of my mental health, I don't want to go. It's very easy to do that because no one is going to say to you, you're lying.
mhm.
Well, I mean, they'd be like a strong person to say that. Well, most people won't say to you, you're lying. So I think that with mental health and with the labels attached to it, although the labels are important in order for you to get the correct treatment or venture down the treatment path, um, and to understand and to be accepting of what is happening to you and why it's happening, and that you're not like crazy or you're not making it up. It's so important to have that like definitive, this is what it is or this is what it could be. But yeah, there is also the other side of, okay, well, I've been told I have this, therefore, and then you, yeah, obviously use it to your advantage
Yeah.
when it's not the case. And it's difficult because of people who use mental health and the labels and the name of things to their advantage tend to be the ones who are struggling the most because they haven't took accountability and acceptance for what they have. They just use it as
Mhm.
something to get out of things or to use it to benefit themselves without actually sitting with it and working through it. And that tends to be the case. So yeah, it can be very, very difficult. I know like myself, if when I'm talking about like my mental health struggles, I don't tend to bring up too much like the things I've been diagnosed with because they chop and change a lot. So I'll say like I struggle with mental health and I was diagnosed with depression and anxiety, but it's not something that like I tend to bring up a lot
Mhm.
because yeah, I do think that people sometimes will look at you in a certain way and expect you to make an excuse for the fact that you've got a mental health condition, or they expect an explanation as to why you have it.
Yeah.
You don't need to explain yourself to anyone, and you don't need to have an excuse for anything.
Yeah.
It just is what it is.
Oh, that is so true. I want to talk about your Instagram page as well. You have a page called World of Wellness, which I love, and you always post like incredible tips and mental health little quotes and stuff like that. How did that come about? Like, when did you start that, and what was your inspiration behind doing that?
Yeah, so I have always, since I can remember, always wanted to help people. And then from when I received like that the initial diagnosis when I was 21, and then really struggling with my mental health, from then on, I really wanted to help people like me who struggles with mental health, because when I on my social media that I was using, I didn't see any mental health pages. I saw none of them, and that was partly my own fault because I didn't look for them, but partly the fault of a social media platform, which is like we kind of talked about earlier, to show people's highlight reel, and they don't promote more positive messages, because obviously the things that I write about now on my wellness page, big social media platforms don't profit from that. They profit from sales, and they profit from like all of the marketing and all of that they do, and that doesn't come from mental health, unfortunately, in this planet that we live on. And I just think I was getting so sucked into the Instagram life and like the social media life of like, this has to be perfect. And I was at a tipping point in my life where I had had 4 therapists. They hadn't worked for me. Some of them had told me horrendous things. One told me I would never be cured of mental health because I was too clever, and it's a placebo. Therapy is a placebo. So another one told me to get over it. But I was just like stressing out, and I needed to get over it. Yeah. So I had all these really negative experiences, and I hadn't been to therapy for like nearly a year because I was so traumatized by the bad experiences that I had. And I was at a point where I knew I wanted to go back to therapy, but I was so scared to go back because I just thought, what if this is just going to be a 5th time of being told basically that it's your fault that you're like this and there's nothing that anyone can do. And I just really wanted to put myself in a place where if therapy didn't work for me, then I had something to help myself and other people. And that turned into World of Wellness, and it was somewhere really for me to like thought dump and get these positive messages out that I had floating around in my head, that I could then look back on myself and read when I was having a bad time, and reread what I'd written, because I was writing it for people, but for me as well. And to reread what I'd written and be like, right, this is what you said, like this is what you need to do, this is who you are, like remember this. And I think that it kind of like spiraled from there, and I got very like into the whole, like I'm very aesthetically, I like to be aesthetically pleased in terms of Instagram. So I got into like the aesthetic, and like it became something that I really enjoyed. And then my little sister started doing the photography for it, so it was like more of like a little collaboration, and it just like really helped me. And then it became more of like things that were important to me. So Black Lives Matter movement, that was super important to me last year. I mean, it still is really important to me now. But as that whole thing was happening with the George Floyd murder, and people started listening more, it became so important. So I was able to use that platform and not have like my face attached to it, and use the platform for purely for Black Lives Matter, and for nothing else, for no personal gain, for nothing else but that. And I just think it's kind of like it's gone into something bigger than I thought it was going to be. I thought it was just going to be me posting about my mental health and like trying to help people, and it's more now. Like if you look back on the progress of it, it's kind of went from that into like a really important issue to me. And then I took like 8 months away from the page to really like reconnect with myself and like listen to Black Lives Matter and listen to the social issues and the economic issues and the world issues that we have, and really educate myself. And then when I came back, to World of Wellness, it was just super important for me then to use that platform to post about like the journey of healing, but also use it to post about these super important issues like Men's Mental Health Week has just been, or Men's Health Week has just been. Pride Month, obviously it's the last day of Pride Month today, so I just did like a Pride thing, and it's purely to just, for more the purpose of like education, in that these things happen and these things affect mental health, and you might not. So I'm a straight white woman, like a scientist, like British, white privilege. Like I have all of these things, which is another reason probably why I don't attach like my face and stuff to my page at the minute, just because although people know that I'm a white woman who's straight, I think it's so much easier to read something and you forget that that's who's posting than to have this image attached, because I don't need someone to see me to go, oh, she's a white woman and she's talking about pride, or she's a white woman, she's talking about Black Lives Matter, good for her. Like, I don't want it to be about that. I want it to just be about pride, or to just be about Black Lives Matter, or to just be about like the genocides that happen, or to just be about that thing. And then I also want, for the healing side of it and like the growth side of my Instagram, for people to see that as it's as the words on the page. So to read it and go, I can relate to this person. I have no idea who they are, but I can relate to them on a level, and I don't feel so alone. And it's kind of like my page has definitely grown from that. It's definitely mental health focused in every aspect, regardless of if I post on a social issue or not. It's all mental health focused. But it's just the things that I post now are the things that I need, or I needed to hear. Or if someone messages me, which happens, like I get quite a few messages of people like asking for help, or asking for like, I don't know, a bit of guidance into something, and I'll always say like, I'm not a therapist, there's no qualification here other than scientist. If you need me to look at your blood, great, but anything else, I'm not like experienced that. But I think sometimes people, they don't need that, they just need someone to listen. And so like they might want to get something off their chest, and then they'll say like, oh, can you post something about this? So if I feel like I can and I can help them, then some of the posts come from there as well. But yeah, it's just, World of Wellness is so important to me and like super close to my heart, because it's something that I feel like I needed to hear way back when. And it's still things I need to hear. So even when I had a bad day today, I'll go back on my page and then look through a couple of my posts. I just like what I've said in like the caption, just what I've said on one of the posts, just to remind myself that how far I've come, and to not give up on myself, because the person who wrote that post at that point in time, she wasn't giving up on me, and that was me. So I'm not going to give up on myself now. So it's more, it's personal, but it's for everyone, but it's very personal as well. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So do you have like a goal for the page, or like future plans for it, or where you want it to go from here?
I don't think I have a goal for it, because I feel like, if I set a standard of a goal, then it might, I feel like it'll take away from posting just like what I want to help.
Right.
But all I really want from that page is for people to like get something from it, for people to relate to it, or to just see something and it makes them happy, or like it makes them feel less alone, just to really help people at some point in their journey, and to help me. Like I kind of see it as it's a bit of a open journal kind of thing for me currently. So my plans for it are all aesthetic at the minute. So I know exactly like the plan that I'm going to post, but I don't necessarily know what I'm going to post. I tend to make the posts up on the day. I'll tend to have a day where I'm like, okay, I'm going to post today, and then I'll make the post up as I'm about to post it. And then I take about 50 hours to write a caption, because the captions are so important to me. So that's the thing that takes the longest probably, is to write a caption. Yeah, and then that's why I only post once a week, really. once, maybe twice a week, because it takes so long, because I want them to all be perfect, and like I want them to all like be able to be relatable to it, like at least one person to read it and go, okay, I don't feel as alone. And that's the thing that's really important to me. So as much as like all followers and likes and comments and all of that, as much as it's like lovely on a page, and I really appreciate it, and it kind of validates my existence of the page and my existence on the page, it's the people who message. And do you know what? You probably get this. People message you and they're just messaging you to say, I really like your content, or like, oh, I really related to something on your page, or oh, keep going, it's really good, or just something along them lines. Literally, like, these people have no idea how much they've impacted my day.
Yes.
Just to hear that. That is literally the reason I keep going, and the reason why I do it. Because of them people who think that they're just saying one sentence, and I'll probably read it, or it'll go into like my review section and I won't even look at it, and I'll just read it, and it just literally lifts me so much to be like, this is why I'm doing it. This is the purpose. Like, this is why. And it genuinely lifts me up so much more than however many likes or however many comments like could ever do.
Yeah, I get the exact same. There's days when I'm like, oh, I don't know, this isn't getting enough views or streams as I was hoping. I don't know if it's really helping anybody. And then you get that message, and somebody even just saying thank you for posting this thing, or like I love your content, or anything like that. It just changes your whole perspective, and you're like, okay, I think this is worth it.
It really does. It's a validating thing to hear or to read, is that someone appreciates you and what you do. It's so validating, and it's, as much as you can accept yourself and be so happy with the work that you're doing and be so self-validating, if there's nothing like some stranger in some corner of the world seeing what you do and validating it for you as well. Like, there's something about that that's so powerful.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, I have just a couple more questions for you. I want to talk about the pandemic and your job. You work in the hospital, you mentioned that. How has that changed for you over the past year and a half? Like, has that really been affected by the pandemic? And I guess, like, working so closely or in that field during this time, has that affected your mental health through this past year?
Yeah, that's a brilliant question. So during the beginning of the pandemic, I worked in an adult hospital, and it was one of the major hospitals that was getting the COVID patients. I think it was one of the first hospitals in the UK to get COVID patients, and it was full very quickly with COVID patients, and a lot of the other workload dropped off, and it was no one knew how infectious they were, no one knew what the disease was like, no one knew anything about it. So the way that we had to treat it in the hospital was as if it was the most infectious thing that you will ever see in your life. So it was a lot of like PPE, gown, or additional like measures that we had to take in order to make sure that we were safe, as well as like all the staff and patients were safe. And so, yeah, we kind of got thrown in the deep end of no one knew what to do, and then all of a sudden it was, okay, treat it as if it's like really bad. So that was like a huge shift, and then there was a massive fear factor then of every single sample that you had was like, okay, is this from a COVID patient? Is it an aerosol? Like, if I open this sample, is it aerosol? Can it potentially like I don't know, get onto me and like contaminate me? Am I going to take it home if it gets on my clothes? Or so yeah, there was a massive fear factor in terms of that. And then also I work shifts. So I was doing like night shifts, day shifts, then you have the people isolating, you have people off sick, you have people with COVID, people shielding. So then I ended up picking up a lot of overtime. One of my coping mechanisms, that is actually, so I feel like my mental health was dipping, but I was using work as a coping strategy for that. And then in the middle of the pandemic, I switched I applied for another job and switched to a children's hospital. So that's where I'm currently at now. I'm currently specialising in paediatrics. And the switch was the best and worst thing. The worst because it forced me to sit with my mental health, because the change of pace was ridiculous. Like, it went from 100 miles an hour, unable to function, to super slow, like hardly getting any samples, because kids don't really get sick with COVID. There was very minimal kids. Like, there was a couple in that was sick with it, but most of them were sick with other things, and then they also had COVID. And also they cut the lists down for like surgeries, like not urgent things, so that they cut all of that down. So the amount of patients that we had in the hospital was cut down massively as well. So the workload was very small, and that made me sit with my mental health, honest, like you would not believe. And I just couldn't function for like the first month of that change. It was too much of a change for me to handle. So yeah, I really struggled with that. Really struggled with it. But then because of that, I think that's where I found like my sense of, this job is super important that I do, and like I'm important in this world because of the job I do as well. And it kind of made me like reevaluate what I do for a living. I just thought it was literally a job, but like I'm now super proud of the job that I do, and like really proud of like what I've done to get to the place that I am at the age that I'm at, because I know I've got quite far for how old I am, and to sit back really and kind of allow myself the the self love and the self appreciation for how many people's lives I've helped to save or change. And I think that was important in terms of like my mental health journey, because I never accepted that part of myself, because I just thought like I should always have more, do more, be at a higher place. But to really like sit and accept that was huge for my mental health. And I think that probably the thing that helped me realize that all of these different things in my life actually all link together, and they're not all individual things. So I think in terms of like the pandemic, although it was really difficult, and there was a lot of life changes, it was also really good, because I mean, like you said earlier, it forces you to sit with yourself in every aspect.
Yeah.
You have to.
I just have one more question for you that I ask all of my guests that come on. So is there a stigma or a misconception around mental health that bothers you the most, or that you hear most often that isn't true?
I feel like there's so many.
Yeah.
But I would say the one that I hear most often that isn't true is that if you suffer with mental health, that it's a weakness, that you are weak and that you are fragile and you are not capable. Because people who struggle with mental health will get themselves up every day and fight every single day for their existence against themselves are the strongest people that I know, whether they know it or not. The strongest individuals are those that go to war with themselves every day and still make it through the day 100%. And that's the thing that I hear the most, and the thing that bothers me the most, because it's the thing that people who struggle with mental health believe about themselves, that they are weak, when in actual fact they're the complete opposite.
Yes, I
Yeah.
completely agree. I love that one. Okay, well, that is all the questions that I had for you. Was there anything else that you wanted to bring up that we didn't touch on?
Oh God, I feel like we could literally, I feel like we relate so much that we
Yeah.
could talk forever.
We really could.
No, literally, we really could. What I did want to ask you is what like got you started on the podcast, and like really if you are where you want to be with it, and like are you proud of yourself for it? I
Oh
really
my
think you
gosh.
should be.
Yes. I am so proud of like how far it's come. I mean, it's still fairly small and I want to grow it some more, but yeah, I'm so happy with where it's at. And growing up, I struggled with depression and BPD myself, and nobody really talked about mental health or depression or anything like that. And it was so kind of frowned upon to even talk about. And so I felt like I had nowhere to turn. I had nobody to really talk to or relate to at all. And then at the same time, there was no kind of resources or people to talk to for my family or my parents. So they didn't know what was going on with me. I didn't know what was going on with me. We didn't really talk about it as a family. And so then, I mean, I've come to terms with all of that now, and I know so much about my own story and my struggles. And then this past year during the pandemic, our work shifts were split up. And so I was stuck with one other person for the entire year. And we got really close, and we talked about our mental health a lot. And earlier this year, I decided like I really wanted to start a podcast to kind of bring resources forward and talk to therapists and talk to other people about their struggles and their stories and just get the conversation going and keep it going all year round. I think there's a lot of those kind of one-off days where people celebrate and talk about mental health, but I find a lot of the time it sticks to just that one day. And so I wanted to keep going all year round. And when you hear other people talking about their stories and if you relate to them, I think it also encourages you to talk about your own and maybe help you come to terms with that yourself. So yeah, that's kind of how I got it started, and it's definitely growing. You're the first kind of international guest, I guess.
Oh, thank you then.
So yeah, I'm super excited for where it can go. But I mean, I know it's small, but I know there are people listening, and if it can help even one person, then I think it's totally worth it.
Oh, 100%. I completely agree.
Yeah.
I honestly completely agree with everything you've said. I think sometimes the worst things with mental health are the fact that we have mental health celebration days.
Yeah.
Because, exactly like you said, the conversation goes for a day, and then it stops for another year.
Yeah.
It's not a day thing. It's really not. It's all year round, every single day. And I completely agree. The more that people talk about it, the more that people are open and vulnerable and share their real, raw, hard experiences, then the more other people are gonna. It's like a snowball effect, but in a good way.
Yes. Yeah.
So I really appreciate what you're doing, and I really, really do. I would love to do a podcast myself. I just really don't think that I have at the minute the time or the resources or anything to do it. But to be able to have the opportunity to come on and to speak about these things that are super important to me and to other people, like it's really an honor.
Oh, well, thank you. I appreciate you so much for coming on and sharing your story and your journey and just being so completely raw and open about everything. I think a lot of people are gonna love this episode as much as I am. Like, this was such a good conversation. So, thank you.
It really was. We should so catch up in like 6 months and see where we're at. That'll be so
Absolutely.
good. Oh, amazing.
Okay, so if people want to reach out to you or have more questions for you, are you open to that? And what is the best way that they can do that?
Yeah, 100%. I'm completely open to if anyone wants to reach out. Best way to get me would be to be on my Instagram, which is @_world of wellness_. Don't know why I chose so many underscores, but that's the best way to get me, really. Or they can email me, which is all one word, another wellness page @gmail.com. That's another way to get me if they've got any questions. And yeah, I am more than happy to answer anything, or to clear anything up, or even just to listen if someone wants to speak, and be heard.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for tuning in today. Feel free to reach out at any time. You can contact me on Instagram and Facebook at Stomp the Stigma YYC, and you can email me at stompthestigmayyc@gmail.com. If you like the podcast, please like and subscribe on YouTube, Spotify, Google Podcasts, or Apple Podcasts. And if you or someone you know would like to come on, I would love to have you. Share your story, speak your truth, and together we can stomp the stigma.